Welcome to Pike Creek Farm. My name is Renee and I really appreciate you stopping in today. And today we are part of the Pies of March collaboration, and this is put on by Tony at Kettle Kitchen and Leanne at Mennonite Farmhouse. And every day in March there's going to be a different pie recipe. Some savory, some sweet, all different kinds of crust, all different kinds of fillings. Traditions from the different parts of the country or the world, yeah. And so today what I'm going to do is something that is from my heritage. Three of my grandparents are Canadian. I'm from Michigan, grew up in Detroit area, and three of my grandparents immigrated over from Canada, different areas. And one is from north of Ottawa, the French Canadian area, and his family used to make a French tourtiere. And my mom would make it, and it was okay. It's a meat pie. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything like that I craved. But several years ago, one of my co-workers, who also has family in Canada, she started making and bringing to our potlucks when we would have a potluck for Pie Day in March. So she would bring a French tourtiere, her family's recipe, or I'm not even sure where she got the recipe. I shouldn't say it's her family, but Bonnie would bring this pie in, and it was so flavorful, so wonderful. So I knew I wanted to make a French tourtiere, French Canadian tourtiere, and I'm probably massacring the name. I'm so sorry. Mom called it a meat pie. My oven's preheating. I knew I wanted to make a meat pie, but I wanted to make Bonnie's recipe and not my mom's. And Mom told me just a few years ago that she had changed the recipe and gotten one from someone else. Where they live in Florida, there's a lot of Canadians, and she'd gotten a recipe from one of her friends, and it was a lot better than what she used to make. I never was able to taste that one, so hopefully it tasted like this. But I'm going to make a French tourtiere, French Canadian tourtiere. Now I asked Bonnie, I called her up and I said, so did you make homemade pie crust, when you bring it into work? And she said she loves to make pie crust, but usually she was in too much of a hurry and she used store-bought. I can make pie crust. It is not my specialty. My family seems to think it's okay. And I am sure there will be other collaborators during this whole month that will make wonderful crust who are more experts at it than I am. But I'm going to show you that you can use a store-bought crust and still make a beautiful pie. So let's get making our Pie of March, which for me is French Canadian tourtiere meat pie. Yum, yum. The first thing to do is to put the bottom crust in. This is a 2-crust pie. So if you're going to make a homemade pie crust, you don't want it to be a sweet one. I would not add sugar to it. I don't add sugar when I make my meat pies crust or, pot pie. If I can get the crust out. Okay. Woo! That wasn't as easy as I was hoping. So I'm just going to unroll this and press this into the pie plate. And the thing that makes this pie so good is the filling. And I will put the recipe down below. And Bonnie's recipe calls for 8 ounces of turkey and 8 ounces of ground pork. Now my mom made it with ground beef and pork, which I think is traditional, but beef didn't always agree with her, so she would do turkey, and I loved her, so I'm sticking to her recipe. She does have that you can substitute beef for turkey in the recipe, but we're going to go with the tried and true. So I'm going to set that aside. So in a saute pan, I have a 1/2 pound of ground turkey and a 1/2 pound of ground pork. Not sausage, just plain unseasoned pork, because you want it to absorb all these flavors that we're going to be adding, which there's a lot. So we are going to this, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of finely diced celery, 3/4 of a cup of finely chopped onion. I used my chopper on the smallest setting. Put that over there. Sorry for the noise. 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, and I bought garlic. I can't find it right now, so I'm going with the refrigerated. And let me get that out of the way. Next, we have to grate for 1/3 of a cup of grated carrot. Bonnie was a wonderful person to work with. She was one of those real calming people and always got her work done and played classical music. She retired almost 2 years ago and is now a pastor. But I miss her presence in the office. I did that pretty good. 1/3 of a cup. I don't know if it's supposed to be pressed down. Let's get the rest off the grater. That goes in with the meat. And 1/3 of a cup of potato, also shredded. Okay, 1/3 of a cup. So I'm going to clean up this mess here, and then we can start cooking the filling. Okay, have the heat on, and we're going to cook all this and break it up until the vegetables are tender, the meat's cooked. So my dad's mom came from London, Ontario. Fun fact, she grew up on the same street as Guy Lombardo. Those of you who know who Guy Lombardo is. And she even went to New York and took my grandpa there for New Year's Eve with Guy Lombardo at the Waldorf Astoria. I used to love going there. They have different candy bars. They're called Coffee Crisp candy bars, and they're from, I think it's Nestle that makes them. But oh man, they're so good, but there's nothing over here like it. So whenever any of us go over to Canada, we always get Coffee Crisp candy bars. And we're going to drain off any grease that comes out. Now, Bonnie has a secret ingredient, a special ingredient. And she says you don't have to put it in, but it doesn't taste as good. So I went and bought some because I don't usually drink cognac. And I took a sip of it, and holy moly. I don't know what you do with it normally, but that wasn't the right thing. But it does give such a flavor in this that is really wonderful. But she says you can leave it out. So I'm going to keep browning this, well, cooking I guess more. And I will bring you back when we go on to the next steps. Okay. I drained off. There's a little bit of grease, not much. And I was rereading her directions, and you can add some oil to cook all this, but it really didn't need it for me. But now what we do is we add 2/3 a cup of chicken stock. I have broth actually. 2 teaspoons of the cognac. It smells good. And now we're going to add a bunch of different wonderful spices that are really going to help give it wonderful flavor. 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, now we're going to get to some fun ones. We're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of dried sage and also of thyme. So, sage, thyme, one 1/16 of a teaspoon of ground cloves. I have 1/8, so I'm gonna just do half. I don't know if I have a 1/16. And also a 1/16 of ground cinnamon. And a 1/16 of nutmeg. So quite a variety of herbs and spices. Make it very fragrant, and when she would bring this into the office, the smell was amazing. So we're gonna let this simmer for about 15 minutes for the flavors to come out of everything and to combine. Now we remove it from the heat, and you can see everything is cooked together. It smells wonderful, and I am not a fan of cloves. A little goes a long way, and it does not taste overwhelmingly of cinnamon or cloves, or I don't even taste those actually. What we do now is we take 1 tablespoon of breadcrumbs, and I just have plain breadcrumbs. You don't want any other seasoning. And we stir this in and let it sit for 3 minutes to rehydrate and absorb some of the liquid. It's amazing how adding just that 1 tablespoon of breadcrumbs, it was a rounded tablespoon, makes a difference. So now we are going to bring back over our pie crust and spoon the filling into it. And like I said earlier, you can double the filling recipe and freeze it and make a pie the second, another time, and not have to make the filling. So it'd be a real quick dinner. This smells, I wish I had smell-o-vision, because this smells beautiful. Now we're going to put the top crust on top and just get it evenly spread out. Tuck under the outside, the top crust. And then we will pinch it. Okay, press that there. And now I'm going to flute the edge. Pinch it. You can use a fork and seal it that way if you like. Or any other fancy way. I know some people make ropes and put on top, and braids, and now we're going to put some vents in it. I'm going to put this in the oven for 12 minutes, and then I'll set the timer, and then I'll come back and lower the heat to 350 and set it for 25 minutes. And I'll bring you back when it's done. Here it is out of the oven. It was bubbling. So I'm going to let it rest. Here is the pie. The first piece out. I'm not the best at cutting pie. See, I don't know if the colors will show up. You can see the carrots and everything in it. It's not dry. Just such good flavor. All those herbs and seasonings. It's just a wonderful pie. I'm cooking some asparagus and mushrooms to go with this, and this will be dinner tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you Tony and Leanne for putting together the pies of March. I'll have the recipe down below, and I'll have the playlist for all the channels, and of course I'll have links to Tony and Leanne's channels, and they'll have the playlist there. So thank you for watching. See you next time at Pike Creek Farm.